Because
I so love that
yeah.
because you're right. I feel like so many people, and even it's just funny. I've been coaching a recent college grad, and she is making the transition into the working world. And we had a conversation, and she started crying because she was just like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is what life is. I have to wake up, go to the office and work, go home. I'm exhausted. I don't have a social life anymore. And just like going through. And I'm like, you know what?
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't. And we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hirsch Redpun. And if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. With me today on Truth Tastes Funny is Emily Guerra. Emily is a productivity life coach who helps people get unstuck, essentially, helps them get motivated. She's created the productivity flow. And it may sound all well and good to be productive and be in flow, but I think that it takes a certain mindset to really get unstuck. And one of the things we talked about, Emily, before you came on the show, was that you had wanted to be a wedding planner, and COVID kind of interfered with those plans, but you had it in your head since you were a little kid that you were gonna be a wedding planner. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, that is right. Even in high school and all throughout college, I had so many different internships and jobs doing events and weddings. And honestly, up until my senior year of college, that was my plan. And then COVID happened and weddings were not happening. And so I had a couple month lull there where I was just like, okay, I can't work right now. I'm not making any money. I just graduated college. What am I going to do with my life? And I kind of felt so stuck and so like I had no path forward. And through that experience, I luckily stayed in therapy. I've been in therapy ever since I was a kid. And I think it's something that really allowed me to figure out my path forward. And I started doing social media freelancing. And through that, I discovered that I was really coaching a lot of my social media clients about how to be productive and boost their productivity and boost our own workflows together. And so from that, the productivity flow is born, and the rest is history.
It's funny because, the productivity and efficiency and being on point are all things that a wedding planner would have
Yep.
to have, you know,
Yes.
and but it's it would never be something that anyone would anticipate that if they had such a clear goal that circumstances would interfere that way. And I know from my own experience that taking that pause, was just it was a shift that was forced upon us, but it
Mhm.
just you couldn't go back. You couldn't
Yeah.
go back to whatever existed beforehand because you had to have a paradigm shift. So you had to start looking at things differently and then to go back and say, okay, now the lights went back on, like the electricity went back on. Now I'm going to go do exactly what I was going to do before, you know?
Yeah, no.
Um,
And honestly, during that lull period, that was kind of my plan. I was like, COVID's going to end soon, lockdown's going to end soon, and I can just go back to wedding planning and it'll all be fine. And then 2 months hit, 3 months hit, 4 months hit. And I was like, okay, I guess lockdown is not ending anytime soon. And I had to make a decision. Like, do I want to wait and continue in this lull period, or do I want to pivot and actually feel like I'm moving myself forward? And making that decision was a challenge. It was not like an overnight decision that I had to make. It took a lot of reflection, asking myself a lot of different questions, and also just evaluating, was my plan before, was that all? Like, is there something more that I could be doing? Like, am I limiting myself in that sense? And so having that dialogue in my head was so key in order for me to be able to actually make those steps forward.
And to go back a second,
Yeah.
you had mentioned this that being in therapy really helped
Mm-hmm.
and that you had been in therapy since you were young. Do you want
Yep.
to share a little bit about that and that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Honestly, I think every single person in this world could benefit from therapy, even
Yeah.
therapists, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I'm very open about my experience with it because it really has changed my life in so many foundational ways. When I was around 10 years old, my parents got divorced. And one of the best things that they did for me was put me in therapy to handle the divorce, to handle, going back and forth between households and doing the every other weekend thing. And that whole thing was a very large transition, particularly for a 10-year-old. And so
Yeah.
I really applaud my parents and putting me into therapy at such a young age and encouraging me to keep it up throughout high school and to keep it up throughout college. So kudos to them, number one.
Yeah.
And then I think I totally had a lot of different therapists throughout my younger years. And then in my beginning, I think freshman year of college, I found a therapist that I am still with today, like 10 years later. So that's crazy to think about. But it also just shows that she knew me and she knew what I was going through in college with all the event and wedding planning. And she knew that that was my passion and what I wanted to do. So when it came time for me to pivot, she knew what questions to ask me and she knew how to get in there with me in a way that I didn't know. And that was so key in order for my reflection period and in order for me to be able to decide and have an action plan moving forward. So I strongly always recommend therapy to every single person because there's just things about us that we don't know and we have to learn and we have to uncover more emotional awareness, and a therapist helps you do that.
Well, there's a couple things that are resonating. One is that as you describe it, it's very clear that you were not alone, quote unquote, through this entire maturation process, of your life.
Mm-hmm.
That you never felt probably those of us, if we're fortunate enough to have our parents around us, relatives, family, friends, that's great. But that doesn't stop us from feeling alone because
Absolutely.
none of those people are really dedicated to our own internal mental health. It just doesn't work that way. And
Exactly.
parents can being a parent, myself, I know parents will say, "Oh, what's going on? Can you tell me what?" But the kids don't always want to talk about it with their parents.
Totally.
And so there was that you were not
Mhm.
alone during this process of growing up and facing a pivot like the one that we discussed. And then the other
Absolutely.
thing was that with therapy, it must change constantly in that you're going through so many different things. And you said it's amazing you've had this one therapist
Mhm.
for 10 years. As a professional, my role is a message therapist. So I'm not a licensed therapist like a clinical therapist or a psychotherapist. But it was funny that I chose that because as you described what you were what you were saying, about they getting you to think about yourself and consider, that's exactly what I do with clients is get them to think
Yeah.
about what their what is their brand about, what's their
Yeah.
personal brand, and it's so fun to for my clients to dig into their business in a way that's personal,
Yep.
emotional, empathetic, sensitive, all the things that are often not associated with business.
I
Um,
love that.
and you've chosen a path that is similar in that
Mhm.
you're helping people become more productive, understand their concerns. Did you ever think of going a more clinical route and possibly becoming a therapist?
I haven't. And that's a great question. It feels like it would be like a natural pivot for me to do considering my background. But I think I want to bring a lot of the lessons that I learn in therapy into my coaching and do it on a more broader scale because with therapy, it's really, you can talk about everything in your life and you can go all domains. Whereas I coach a lot of self employed women and women who run small teams of like 5 people or less. And so there's a lot more niche topics that we discuss and we coach on, but I always love bringing my therapy lessons into it. So that way they don't feel like they're getting a therapy session, but we can call it that in a
But they
way.
are in a way, in a
In
way.
a little way.
Now you may not be aware of this, but but I think it's important to inform you that you have a very bubbly personality, a very positive energy, and a very
Thank
happy
you.
kind of way about you.
Oh, I
And
appreciate that so much.
of course, and I'm not just saying it to flatter you. I think I'm interested to see for you to share a little bit about your experience with emotions
Yeah.
and people, because a lot of times, we're our emotional state is a reflection of the people around us. Sometimes I used to find this happen to me where someone would be in a really bad mood. It would, if I cared about them, I would
Mhm.
empathize and become in a bad mood, especially as a
Totally.
parent that happens, because if your child is sick, God
Yeah.
forbid, or something like that, you get angry or you feel it.
Yeah.
But in your case, having gone through therapy, being in the business of helping people, how do you react? What's your reaction to their state of mind?
That is a great question. I think, firstly, I want to preface everything by saying my situation with COVID, where I felt like wedding planning was kind of just taken away from me, it made me really angry for a really long
Yeah.
time and really resentful because I felt like I had no control over my life. And I hated that. And I took a lot of self work, a lot of awareness, and a lot of intentional self talk in order to become my natural positive person again. And that was a shift, and it took a while. And so, because of my own experience with that, I know that it is an up and down journey for every single person. And that journey looks different for every single person. And every single client is going to have a different type of reaction to their situation. And so I like using my own background as kind of like that foundation of like, you know what? Even if this person is really going through it right now, I want to help them. I want to feel with them, but I can't put that on me. I can't own it as myself because then I'll just limit myself and I'll hinder myself. So it's really about separating the tips and the help that I can provide versus taking ownership of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, because you want to empathize, you want to
Absolutely.
feel, you can in
And I
some ways,
will.
and you will, but you can't carry around. It's almost like actors who take on a role and it's a
Yeah.
really powerful role, and maybe for the 6 months or whatever that they're doing the project, they'll feel that all the time, but then they have to let it go. They have to
Yes.
get rid of it because they can't be carrying around that trauma, let's say, or that character might have been carrying around.
Oh, that's a
Um,
great way of putting it.
yeah, it's just I listen to a lot of interviews with actors, and
There
I
you go.
do I do see the psychological kind of aspect of it.
Hmm.
Now, in terms of you're working with a lot of women who are, you say, they're self-employed, so let's say they're entrepreneurial. What's your take on what it's like right now to be a woman in the business world, or be in a situation where there's still gender inequality, there's still issues. What's the atmosphere like right now for your clients?
Well, I think COVID really changed the game because it allowed people to work from home and not feel bad about it, and allowed people to start doing their own thing as a supplement from whatever position they lost in COVID. And so that's really like what happened to me as an example. Like I was going to be an employee, and then COVID happened, and I decided to become self employed instead. And I think it paved the way for a lot of females who felt like they were not appreciated or felt like they were worked too hard to say, you know what? I do have another option, and I can control that option a lot better than I can control what I'm in right now. And I've been seeing a ton of younger entrepreneurs, people who are graduating college, just out of college in their 20s and starting their own thing. That's so, so common right now. Again, me, I'm only 26, and I feel like I have been self employed since I was 22. And so it's definitely changing in that sense. I have never actually joined a corporate role before, so I can't really speak to the professional setting in that way, but I love speaking about entrepreneurship and empowerment because it really is a brand new world in that sense. And it's so fun to see how many female coaches there are and how many female entrepreneurs starting their own businesses there are. And I just love being able to coach all different types. I've coached from screenwriters to fitness coaches to hybrid workers. It's just like so fun seeing the different niches that women are tapping into right now.
Yeah, it is a fun time. And I have taken note of the fact that, well, first of all, everyone went through shifts
Mhm.
where you had that moment of inflection, where you were like, okay, do I want to keep going this way? Do I want to go that way? And if you felt like you were kind of, taking a lot of crap or whatever, you might feel like, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. I have friends that quit jobs, and just were like, I'm just leaving. Life's too short, that
Exactly.
feeling. But
Exactly.
specifically with young people, your generation, making decisions about owning and operating their own businesses is not only have I found it really interesting and inspiring, I've also found it amazing how many of them have become successful so quickly. And there must be a reason for that, and it has a lot to do with their mindset and where their head is at when it comes to business. I think in the past there was just a lot there have been times where whatever generation you're in, there's either things are decided for you, so you
Hmm.
feel you have less choice, you feel you have no
Yeah.
choice. So a lot of people went into what we would consider to be a corporate world thinking they had no choice,
Yep.
right? And of course
Totally.
we do have choices, but we can condition ourselves to think we don't. And then
Mhm.
the other part is the availability of information to educate yourself on how to run a business. I think that's got to have something to
That's
do
what
with it.
I was going to say, actually. I feel like I went to Loyola Marymount University. I loved it. It was best 4 years ever. But honestly, the way I really learned how to start a business and run a business was through YouTube and through different online certifications and just Googling and asking ChatGPT and using all of the tools that are at my fingertips. And people are now realizing that that is so easy to utilize and to do. You don't have to go to the standard 4 year university in order to become a successful business person. So I think that's one arena that's really been booming ever since COVID, as well as the online education space. And then I think another interesting kind of twist to it is I grew up with social media. I was in middle school when Facebook came out. I always had every platform I could remember since high school. So it comes a lot more natural to the younger generations to post, to, engage, to get your voice and brand out there that I don't think was as natural for older generations. So we have that leg up as well that I think is very useful.
Yeah, what I hope will happen with social media, because there's obviously detrimental aspects to social media, and there are all kinds of dangers in a way as far as as
Mhm.
far as what can become of us. But at the same time, I think the merging of your personality, personal life, hopes, dreams, passions, and your business is easier now, and
Yeah.
it's more natural because of what you described. Because it's not like, okay, well, if you get into business and you have to deal with advertising, then you'll know what advertising is and you'll
Yeah.
know what image is.
Yep.
Now you kind of know what image is from a very young age, at least from my business where I sit. And I recognize that our personal brands, quote unquote, take shape when we're young, if
Mhm.
we're engaged in a world that's larger than our own small, town or family.
Yeah,
And
totally.
most likely we will be. Most
Yeah.
likely kids are going to engage and they're going to learn, hopefully, social responsibility a little younger. They're going to learn how to protect themselves, how to be mature in certain situations. I just see that happening among younger people now. And my hope is that uh, our worldview as a society will expand and not be constrained, and that people will grow into who they want to be and give each other
Yeah.
the space to be who they want to be, and not feel like work is one thing. Work is a thing you have to do and it ruins your life and it's the end
Yeah.
of your life and the end of your freedom and fun. And then, there's fun
That's,
because
I so love that
yeah,
because you're right. I feel like so many people, and even it's just funny, I've been coaching a recent college grad and she is making the transition into the working world. And we had a conversation and she started crying because she was just like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is what life is. I have to wake up, go to the office and work, go home. I'm exhausted. I don't have a social life anymore. And just like going through. And I'm like, you know what? No, that does not have to be your life. Let's figure out how to have work life balance. Let's figure out what is missing that makes you happy again and that brings a smile to your face at work and at home. Like, how can we
yeah,
do that? Because it does not have to be that way.
yeah. Now the question becomes, now that there are so many people out there
Mhm.
doing starting their own businesses, coaching, doing all kinds of training, the more entrepreneurial people are, the more competition there is for people like yourself who have started your own business. So what strategies do you employ to try to overcome the challenge of being known? Obviously, being on podcasts is great, doing, getting out there. But
Yeah.
are there any strategies you can share with audience members who are also trying to distinguish themselves out in the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So you are right. There is a lot of competition out there. And I think a mindset shift that I have been really working on is having an abundance mindset and just believing that there is enough clientele, enough work out there for everybody. And the right person, the right coaching client will come to me when it's the right time. And, trusting the process is a lot harder it than it should be. And you can supplement that trust with some action. And some of the actions that I really feel have been the most beneficial to boosting my brand is number one, going on podcasts just like this one and just
Yeah.
being able to talk and share and putting my voice out there and just helping offering value wherever I can. That's really number one. Number two is instead of doing emails, which most people do, I don't do email marketing. I do text message marketing. So I send you weekly texts with short, simple, sweet, either tips, tools, links, whatever the resource may be for the week. And it's bite sized. So that way you don't have to read a super long email. You can just get immediate inspiration. And then boom, that's it. And I've gotten great feedback on my text messages. And I think it's a super underutilized messaging platform that no one's really tapping into. I haven't seen many coaches use it the way I use it. So definitely an underutilized one. And then the social media platform that I always recommend to people is not an average one that you would think of, but it's Pinterest. I think Pinterest is one of the best platforms for coaches, personal development in that arena, or just entrepreneurial spaces like products or whatever you want to highlight. Pinterest is the place to do it.
I like Pinterest, but I never have thought of it as a work platform or
Well,
anything other than a
most
visual
people
platform.
don't. Because if you look at what Pinterest is, each individual pin has to actually link out to a web page or a podcast or something away from Pinterest. So, unlike Instagram and TikTok and wherever where they want you to stay on the platform, Pinterest wants to send you off the platform to help you find brands, to help you find inspiration. So, as a brand, it's the best platform you can use because Pinterest actually encourages users to click and go to your website or to click and go see your podcast. So it's
Oh,
just more
wow.
effective in that way.
Wow. I like that. And I like the texting concept
Mhm.
because on the one hand, we get texts sometimes we don't want. You get like I do it with I have confirmations for meetings that I send out by text. You have to do a lot of confirmation, and that's just the way it is in business. But the idea that we're moving a little bit away from email is
Mhm.
something that I'm sensing. We're moving a little bit, email had reached a place where it no longer was personal because
Yes,
everybody
that's
was
a
mail
great way to say
merging
it.
and doing newsletters and everything. And And every email you get is personalized now to the point where you don't know when it's personal. So it's lost its power that way. Also, you're right, as far as bite-sized pieces. So that's really useful information. And what I'd like to kind of conclude with is to give you the floor to maybe share a little bit of your vision for the future of kind of the world, society, taking this productivity idea to another level. Is there a vision that you kind of have for the future?
Oh, yes. That's honestly my main mission in my life right now is to just redefine productivity out in the world because I strongly believe that the way society right now views productivity is just really unhealthy. It's really about being busy, getting more done in less time, doing it all at the expense of your self-care. And that's really not what productivity should be about. So, my vision for the future would be if everybody looked at productivity more as trying to shift into a productive mindset rather than trying to get everything done in less time. And what I mean by that is, I mean, for people to instead focusing on doing, focus more on your mindset, focus more on figuring out what your motivation is for even doing the thing, focus on having focus, on eliminating distractions and being able to pinpoint when your self-talk is inhibiting you and being able to pinpoint when you're getting anxious about things that you cannot control and bringing your control back into the internal. And then also just finding your flow and getting into the rhythm of things and not worrying about being busy, but just worrying about being effective and efficient. So that is my vision for the future of our society. If everybody could just not worry about being busy, but more worry about the motivation, focus, and flow. That would be so ideal for everyone's work-life balance.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.